It's time to put beautiful borders on our beautiful quilt. Are you ready? Hi everyone, Cristin here, and oh my goodness, our quilt is just gorgeous and huge. We did all the blocks, 41 blocks, what was it, 28 filler blocks I think, I don't remember, a bunch. We have the entire blocks all completed. So now that means it's time to put our borders on. So we are going to do that, and it's not a difficult thing. If you've joined me for any of our past quilts, it's a pretty easy process. It just takes some time. So we are going to start with our inner borders, and we are going to cut up this fabric. So the inner border fabric is the red one with all the Christmas swirls and holly leaves and candy canes and so forth on it. And we are going to cut this into 5 strips, all right? 5, let's see, yep, 5 strips. And we are going to cut these at 1.5 inches times width of fabric. So that means long all the way 1.5 inches wide. And I did back mine with fusible stabilizer. I actually find it a lot easier to go ahead and put fusible stabilizer. I'm using that Kimberbell Fusible Backing, and I put it on the entire piece of fabric, and then it makes it really easy to cut. And then of course our fabric will be so nicely stabilized that when we do our sizing, it will be right. We won't have to worry about it pulling in. So 5 of these at 1.5 inches times width of fabric. All right. And then, okay, so once you have your fabric strips cut, the next very important thing to do is take your quilt, and from the center of your quilt, use your measuring tape and measure your quilt. Don't just use my measurements, measure your quilt. So if you do it from the center, I actually start from the center, so straight down vertically, get that measurement, and then straight across horizontally, get that measurement. And then I do it throughout the quilt just to make sure. And I'll tell you mine, but don't forget, your seam allowance might have been a little bit different, whatever, measure your quilt. It's very important. So mine was 48 inches long and 32 inches wide. So when we do our quilting, we are going to use Christmas 4 border, and then depending on your hoop size is how you'll figure out the quilting. So like I said, Christmas 4 border quilting, and there's a 1-inch size. We're going to use the 1-inch size for the inner borders, and then there's a 4-inch size that we'll use for the outer borders. And the inner border is like a little cute loop, and the outer border is the houses. So very cute on both of them. So depending on your hoop size, I have decided I am going to use the 12-inch design. So your goal is to equal out as close to your length of your quilt. All right, we're going to start with the length of your quilt. So since mine is 48 inches, I know that I want it to be as close to 48 inches as I can. So if you add up the different size options, so there's a 14-inch, which actually measures 14 inches. Some of them are off just a tiny bit, but the 14 is 14 inches. So if you did 14 and did 3 hoopings, it would equal out to 42. And then you could do the 7-inch hooping to have it total 49. I've decided I'm going to do the 12-inch because I can do that and get 4 hoopings. And the 12 inches actually is 11.75, so 11 3/4. And if you times it by 4, you get 47. So it'll be, I'll have a tiny bit of area that's not quilted, but depending on how close you get your quilting, it probably will work out to be pretty much exactly right. Probably, we'll see. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and get all 4 in 1 hooping, which is not a hard thing to do, but it's a little bit different because we won't have different lengths. So I'll explain that as we go further. But first, let me tell you for the different hoop sizes. If you have a 6x10 hoop, the quilting for the 10-inch is actually 9.5 inches. If you did 5 hoopings, it would total 47.5, so very close. If your biggest hoop is a 5x7, you would do 7 hoopings because that would total out to 49. So the ones that are a little over on the quilting, because we only want 48 depending on your quilt, but the ones that are over, it's not a problem. I'm going to show you a way. We're going to put our batting right on our strips, and then it won't matter because the excess will just run off onto the stabilizer or onto the end of the strip that we're not using, that we won't have batting in our seams, and that's the key thing that we want to happen. So the thing is that we want 2 of those strips, the vertical long strips, we want those to be about 48 inches depending on your quilt, but the horizontal ones, the top and the bottom, we want those to be about 34. So my width is 32 inches, and then you add that 1-inch side border on each side, so that will make it actually 34 inches that we want on the top and the bottom. So for that, I only need 3 hoopings of that. So I'm going to do the 12-inch, which like I said is 11.75. So 3 of those would total out to 35.25. So a little bit extra, but like I said, it'll just run off of the side. So I know I just threw a whole bunch of numbers at you, but I'm trying to give you information depending on your hoop size. So figure out what works for you. Just divide it by 48 or however long your quilt is, and then same thing for the top and bottom strips. So we're going to start by sewing 3 of these strips together. So 3 of these, set 2 of them aside. 2 of them we'll put aside, and then the other 3 we're going to sew them together to get the length that we need, and then we will cut them in half to the size that we need for our vertical strips, the left and the right sides. We're going to start with those. So let's go ahead and get started with this part. Okay, once you have all of your strips cut, you're going to cut some batting 1 inch wide, exactly 1 inch. You can cut it exactly the length of your 48 and 32 inch strips if you want, or I just cut mine to the width of the batting so I'm not wasting too much, and then I'll just use multiples. But you want to start it a 1/4 inch down, and I like to use the purple disappearing glue stick. That works really well for me, and you're just adding it on to either your, well, pretty much your batting, because otherwise you might not get it just right. So you can see that you have a 1/4 inch up at the top here, and then your 1/4 inch all along the sides, so that you don't have batting in your seams. And then you just continue to add your batting. Sticky mess. By the way, you can use the spray glue if you prefer. I prefer the glue stick. I like that it doesn't get everywhere. It stays where I'm putting it. And the purple one is nice because you can see it. And you want to just center it right down the middle of your strip so that you have your 1/4 inch seam allowance. And just continue that. Do that for all of your 4 strips. Nice and easy. All right, so keep adding on your batting to your the strip of inner border, and when you get toward the end, hopefully you can see this, when you get to the end, you're just going to cut your batting so it will be a 1/4 inch away from the end there. Nice and simple, easy way to make sure that you don't have batting in your seams, because we've already cut our strip to the size that we need. So then we're just adding the batting already attached, and it will make it so that we won't have any batting in our seams. Easy peasy. See how easily you can see that purple? That makes it so easy to know what part is already sticky and what part's not. And look at how easily this goes on. So when you get toward the end, you just want to cut it. It doesn't have to be exact, but basically a 1/4 inch. So easy to do. And this will take off 2 steps of our quilting. I'll show you that when we get there. All right, now we have them all ready. Hi everyone, so for those that want to join your border strips, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to open up Embellishment Essentials. There's a few things that we're going to learn on this one. So look down here at the bottom. I'm showing that I'm on my 8x12 hoop. I'm going to change that to my 9x14 hoop. So I go to this Preferences folder, and then I look through my hoop sizes and click OK. And then I go up here to the compass and click the H for the hoop button, just so that I can see all of the parts of my hoop. All right, so I'm going to bring in the first border design from this merge stitch file button. So then it's Border Christmas 4, block by block. I use Pez for my machine, and I've decided that I'm going to use the 1x12 design right here, 1x12 Border Christmas 4. Double click on that and it goes to the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the colors right now. So if I click on this little arrow button, because I want all of the parts that I want them to merge so that there's less steps. So this first one is the placement for the batting, and the second one is the placement for, or the tack down of the batting. This third one is placement for the main fabric, which is our border strip. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to a different color, because you can see these are the same and we don't want this to join together. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and you can see it's not doing it because I don't have a window showing. So I'm going to go to, I think it was to view, and then toolbars, and you can see my properties window is not highlighted. So I'm going to click on that, and there's my window. So then I click on the color, and I'm just going to click the first color that comes up, which is dark aqua. And I'm going to say OK. Now this default 2 orange and default 8 light orange are different, so I can go ahead and leave those. And actually I'm going to end up bypassing this first one, because remember I showed you in the tutorial that we added our batting. But I'm going to go ahead and leave these here to remind everyone to bypass them, but you could actually go ahead and delete these first 2 steps if you choose, because we don't need the batting placement and batting tack down. We've already got it in, it's already attached to our fabric. So this dark aqua and then the light orange. So you wouldn't even need to change this third color here if you delete this one. And to delete it, you would just click on it and click delete on your keyboard. All right, and then this last one is the quilting color, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that because they're all going to be the same, so I'm going to join that. All right, so that's the only change I needed to make is this number 313. And like I said, you wouldn't even need to if you delete 1 and 2. So that one's all done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit Control-C to copy and then Control-V to paste. And it goes right on top of the other one. And I'm just going to bring it all the way over to the edge here. And I'm not going to worry about lining it up, and I'll show you why. All right, so now I have 2. I'm going to go ahead and say Control-V again to paste a second one. And you have to click on the stitching and then move it wherever you want it. So actually, I'm going to keep these in order, otherwise it's jumping all around. This is that first one. So I'm going to go ahead and move that over here. And then the second one, I'm going to put it a little bit wonky just so I can show you what this will do. All right, and then Control-V again for a fourth one. And again, this is depending on your hoop size, but you can see that I can fit 4 in my 9x14 hoop. All right, and they're all wonky right now, but that's okay. That's something that we can show how to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click, oops, that was weird. I'm going to click undo, and that moved it. Okay, sorry, my mistake. So I'm going to move this back over here, move this one, clicking on the stitching, there we go. All right, so within the hoop, click, I wonder what this is doing, I'm not sure, sorry about that. Click here. So the other way you can do it, since I seem to be having trouble here, is you can click this way. All right, so I closed the folders just so that I can drag up. You just want to make sure to select all of them. All right, and then once you have them all selected, you can go to Utility. Oh, first we want to do this before we join them. Absolutely important. Don't join your colors yet. You want to do this align and distribute. So I went to Utility and then Align and Distribute. And this first one, I'm going to say, I'm on this Align tab, and I'm going to say this center button here and click Apply. And then you can see they all went straightened out to the center, and then this Distribute button will make it so that the amount of space between each of them is the same. So I've got it on center on the left and center up at the top, and click Apply, and it moved just a little bit. All right, so that just makes it so that you have a little bit of room for your fabric. And then we want to go ahead and join them, so that, because right now we have 20 different color steps and we don't need all of those. So I'm going to go to Utility Color Sort, and it reduced it by 15 color changes. So I'm going to go to New View, and then open up this plus sign and just make sure everything's correct. So there's the placement for our batting, and like I said, you won't need this one, and the tack down for the batting, and then the placement for the main fabric, which is our strip, our border strip, and then the tack down of our border strip, and then our quilting design. So that all worked out exactly perfectly, and like I said, you can delete 1 and 2. I'm going to leave it just so I remember to tell everyone to bypass it, since we added our batting onto our border strip. So that's all perfect. I am going to go to File, Save Stitch File As, and I'm going to create a folder. So we have these folders here. I'm going to create one, this little button here. I'm on a Windows computer. So create new folder, and I'm going to name it 09 Borders. And then I'll double click on that to open it, and I'm going to change this to say Inner Borders. I'm going to say Inner Borders 4, because there's 4 of them. So one thing I want to point out is that for the vertical inner borders, we will need to do 3 hoopings, again depending on your hoop size, but using my 9x14 I will need 3 hoopings for that, and then actually 4, sorry about that, my mistake, 4. We'll need 4 hoopings, so that will equal out to 47 inches of quilting, whereas the outer border, the top and the bottom, we will need 3 hoopings. So we'll need to have 2 different files. You wouldn't want to do, you could certainly keep it this way, but another option is before we joined them, because now that we've joined them, we can't actually do it, but you can create another folder with just 2 of those borders, because you won't need all 4 on the last one. Or you could stop your machine. Actually, that would be super easy. So if you look at the stitch file, when you could just use the 1 file, and when it gets, because you would still have the 2. Yeah, you could just make it stop right there. So it's funny, I don't actually have them in order. It's 1, 2, and then 4, and then 3. That's kind of funny. But anyway, that works just fine. So like I said, you can create another file that just for the last hooping will only have 2 of the strips. Either way, whatever works for you. All right, and then if your machine's on, you can send it to your Luminaire or Solaris if that's the machine you have. I'm not sure what other machines do that, but my machine's not on, so I'm going to do it after I turn my machine on. But you saw how very, very simple that was to join all of the inner borders and to align them so that we have the same amount of space between them. And real quick, a quick, easy way to do the 3 if you decide to, or 2, you would have 2 strips that are longer. So we're on this one, on title 2 is that one that we've already joined. We can't make changes to it once they're all joined, but we can go back to that first tab. Remember, how cool is that? So if we went to this one, to be able to make one that is just the 2 strips, we could click on this and click delete, click on this, click delete. Look at how easy that is. You could even change your hoop size on that last one to be, let's see here, change it to an 8x12. It looks like, yeah, that would still work. Looks like it should fit. It might be pretty close. So you would need to check the size of your 8x12 hoop. It might be a little bit too small, and if so, then you would want to do a little bit larger. But anyway, this is just to show you, because remember I said that the 2 of the strips will need 4 hoopings and the other 2 strips will only need 3 hoopings. So on that last hooping, you could do just the 2, and we would just join it again. Very simple. So we already changed the colors. So we would go to utility color sort. We could even do that. Let's see, utility, align and distribute. Actually, I didn't highlight them. Let's do it this way. All right, just to make sure that they're both highlighted, then you go to utility, align and distribute. And I believe we did the center right there. And then on distribute, you could say center, center. And they're already moved on enough. Oh, because we moved it over. All right, so anyway, so then we would go to utility color sort because we're currently at 10. We want 5, and it reduced by 5. Click new view to make sure that it did it all correctly, and just look through them very quickly, easily. Yep, that looks great. All right, and then you would go to, I turned my machine on now, so I could go to send to Solaris. All right, but you want to make sure to save it. I didn't save it. So file, save as, save stitch file as, and I've already got my inner borders 4. So on this one, I'm going to call it inner borders 2 because there's 2 strips on this one. And that's just for that last hooping. So this is to be able to get all of these inner borders. And like I mentioned, you would need, I'm doing the 12-inch, 12 by 1 inch, and so I would need 4 hoopings to equal 47 inches. And then for the top and the bottom ones, I would need also, I'm doing the 12-inch and 12-inch by 1, and I would need 3 hoopings for a total of 35.25. Even though I need 34, it's not going to matter. The excess will just run off of the edge. So easy peasy. Alright, so I want to show you one thing. So what I'm doing is I take my 1/4 inch seam allowance and I put it inside of the box at the point that the batting starts so that this is not going to be stitched on. Alright, so the batting up at the top of the box, tape it in place. And I can tape the top because I know that the batting, the start of the stitch line is down here, so it's not going to go over that tape. And then I tape it down at the bottom also after the box. So here's the end of the box, and I tape it after that. All right, all ready for the first hooping. All right, once you have your first hooping done, isn't that so pretty? You can choose whatever thread color you want. Obviously, I decided one I wanted to stand out a bit. So you can see where the quilting ends. And the thing is, we want to check on the back to see where the quilting ends. And if you've trimmed your excess stabilizer, then you can easily see where that first hooping ends. And we're going to use that to line up for our second hooping. So all I do is I fold it back from where that first hooping ends, and I'm going to line it up with the within that box, that first box. Get that all lined up, and then pull back the part that's already quilted and use your tape to tape it in place. All right, and then just line this up within that placement stitch and tape it in place. Do that for however many strips that you're doing. I'm doing 4. So I'm just going to, and you're going to make sure that the excess runs off of the front of the hoop. You can see that here. All right, so again, here's that first hooping. We're going to just fold it back to where that first hooping has ended. It's easy to see from the excess stabilizer. And then put it right in at the top of this box, within the box. We did it over the box on the first hooping so that our batting would not be in the seams. But on the second one, we're just doing it right over, right within the box, And you can check it, you can lift it up and see. You can see that the ending of our previous batting is here. Hopefully you can see this. And the box starts here. And then we just make sure that this is all lined up within the box, within that stitch area, and then tape in place. Do that for however many strips you're doing. Okay, everyone, so once we have our inner borders on, how cute are those? Oh my goodness. So once we have all of those on, then it's time to work on the outer borders. So the outer borders are the white with tons of Christmassy things on them. Very, very pretty. We are going to cut 6 pieces. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Got a little scared for a second there. 6 pieces, and they are going to be 4.5 times width of fabric. 4.5 long strips, 6 of them. 4.5 times width of fabric, 6 strips. And I did back mine with fusible stabilizer. I find it easier to cut. I did the entire piece of fabric, and that made it easier to cut, and then it will be all ready for quilting. So one thing I want to point out is I made a mistake. I would not recommend pre-cutting the exact size of your quilt. Mine ended up being a tiny bit short somehow. Not sure how, but they did. And I had to add a little bit of fixer on it. So what I'm going to do on the next one is I'm not going to cut it until it's put together, and that will make sure that I have enough of my borders. Sorry, this is getting in my way. All right, so couple things. You want to have batting enough that will fit onto your strips there, and make them 4 inches wide, not 4.5, 4 inches wide. That'll give us our seam allowance. And same thing with that glue method, same technique there. And don't forget, so now that we have our inner borders on, you need to remeasure your quilt again. So from the center of your quilt vertically and center horizontally, measure your quilt and get those measurements. So mine ended up being 50 inches long and 34 inches wide. So if you think about it, so when we're going to start with the vertical side, so the left and the right side, we're going to start with that. And I'm going to use my 9x14 hoop. I'm going to use the 14x4 quilting design. We're using that Christmas border 4 again, and I'm going to use the 14 inch and using my 9x14 hoop. Whatever hoop size you use, it will be by the 4 inch width design. So if I do 4 hoopings at 14 inches, that will give me 56. And since mine is 50, I need at least 50. And so I'll just let the excess run off of the end of the stabilizer, because we're going to make sure and have our batting stopping at that 1/4 inch mark so that we won't have batting in our seams. So that's for the vertical. Then we'll remeasure again, right? Because we're adding 8 inches. You're adding 4 inches on each side. And so I'm assuming it'll be about 42 inches, but I'm going to measure first and put it together afterward. So you have to do that on your quilt, remember. All right, so I think that's everything. I am going to go to the computer and merge them together. I'll show you how to do that for those that choose to. These are wider, so you won't be able to get as many in one hooping, but we'll do what we can. Hey everyone, so for our outer borders, let's go ahead and open up Embellishment Essentials, and I am going to change my hoop to my 9x14. And I'm going to use the 14 inch design for both of my designs here. So let's see, hoop. Okay. So I used the Preferences tab to get my 9x14 hoop, and then I used this compass and clicked H to be able to see my entire hoop. So I'm going to go to Merge Stitch File, and I'm going to bring in that Christmas 4 design for the border. Border Christmas 4, embroidery files, block by block. Pez is what I use for my machine. And I'm going to use the 14. And the 14 will work for both my the length and the width, because I will do 4 hoopings for the length and 3 hoopings for the width. All right, so here, oh wait, sorry, this is delete. That's that hoop. That was the 1 inch design. We're looking for the 4 inch design now. Sorry about that. All right, so 4 inch, and then I'm doing the 14. So right there, 4x14 border Christmas 4, and it's those cute Christmas houses. Oh boy, that's fun. All right, so I am going to move it all the way over to the corner here, or to the side. And before I copy and paste it, I'm going to make the changes that I usually do. Now, we're going to attach the batting again to our border fabric. So you can delete steps 1 and 2. As usual, I'm going to keep them in so that I remember to tell people to bypass it. So if you take those out, you actually don't need to make any changes to it. You can just join right away. You would just click on it and click delete on your keyboard. I'm going to leave it in though, so I remember to tell people to bypass it. And so I'm going to click on this third one. Since they're both default one blue, I want to make sure to change the color so that those don't join. So I'm just clicking on the color and clicking on dark aqua, and that's the only one that I need to change. All the rest are already different. So that works perfectly. So there's the first one that's already done. So now I can copy and paste it. So I am going to, let's just make sure it's in the middle, up just a tiny bit there. All right, so Control C to copy and Control V to paste. I'm doing that on my keyboard and it goes right on top. Now notice that this is a much tighter fit because this is a 4-inch design in a 4.5-inch with fabric. So it will be tight, and really you could use, if you've got a 10x16 hoop, you could absolutely do that. I'm going to go ahead and keep the 9x14 because I know it will fit with the fabric, will fit within this mark, so I won't have excess that is going to run over on each other. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm just going to make sure that it's in the center. There we go. All right, so these are already, the colors are already all done, so I can join it now. I've got 10 color steps right now. If I go to Utility Color Sort, then I should be able to get it down to 5 color changes. So New View, just to make sure that everything worked. There's our placement for our batting, placement for the tack down, and again, those two are the ones that you can delete because we're going to attach the batting onto our border fabric. All right, and then there's the placement for the main fabric, which is our border strips, and then our tack down of our border strips, and then the quilting design. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. All right, so that's all done. I'm going to do a file, save as, save stitch file as, and I'm going to say outer border 2. There's 2 of them in the design, and I will need to do it 4 times to get a total of at least 50 for my outer borders. And then for the width, I will do 3 hoopings to get a total of at least 42. That should work just fine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send it to my machine since my machine is on. Send to Solaris XP1, say OK, and it says file sent to machine. So that was very easy to do, and let's go ahead and get stitching our outer borders.